Welcome to episode 6, Seasons of Life. I want to thank Lowell Barron for having us here. We're in Fife today in Lowell's office, and this is our 6th episode, and I've been wanting to get Lowell to talk with me for a good while. I've known my buddy here for a lot of years, and he said, "What are we going to talk about?" And I said, "Your story. Nobody knows it better than you do. I just want you to tell your story and about growing up on Sand Mountain as a young boy, growing up on Sand Mountain. And I want to hear your story. And thank you again for letting us be here to use your office in Fife. And Lowell, you just kick it off, buddy.
Well, thank you, Jim. Jim Willingham, I've known for at least 50 years, and Victor Cruz, a videographer here, who's an outstanding videographer from the Gunnersville area. I'm glad to be here. Well, let's start. Let me set kind of the predicate for the beginning of my life. I was born Route 2 section about 3 miles from the junior college. I have 5 siblings. Doc was born in 25. Ola Mae, my sister, was born in 28. Milford was born about 1929. Sister Louise was born in 1932. I was born in 1942. My younger brother was born 5 years later in 1947. My mother was, she bore children. She was 41 years of age when I was born. My younger brother, she was 44 years of age. Back in those days, they had a long period of having children. Had a wonderful mother. Her name was Ollie.
This is a perfect time, and I'm sorry I forgot to say today is your birthday. What a perfect time to have this and talk about your family. Happy birthday, Lowell Barron. You was born in 1942, and I didn't realize you had so many siblings, brothers and sisters. Of course, Dr. Barron, we all know Dr. Barron, and then Louise, that's Roy Sanderson's wife. I knew about Louise, but did you guys know that he had that many siblings? I didn't.
Yes, there were 4 boys and 2 girls in my family. And 3 of them are deceased, but Doc and Louise and myself are the 3 remaining citizens. She's day after tomorrow, she'll be 94. And Doc was 100 in October. So to date, we've got a pretty long lifeline. But I want to talk about the early years of my life. My mother was a wonderful woman, Ollie Barron. My daddy was Bernice Barron. We belonged to the Old Sardis Holiness Church. My granddad, Bartow White, was a minister there many years. And mother was one of the most devout Christians I've ever known, one of the most positive women I've ever known. She had some sayings that I've lived by. One of the sayings she would say all the time, boys, talking about me and my brother, 2 brothers, we were still at home, young. She'd say, boys, there ain't no can't. Now, that's not correct English, but it's powerful. If you think about that and repeat it the rest of your life, you can achieve great things. She also would say, another saying, tell the truth and pay your debts, and everything else will take care of itself. And if you live with those 2 little sayings, I can tell you personally, it will reward you. But my dad was not, he was kind of a mean man. He was not good to the family. He was abusive physically and verbally. So in 1948, my mother, I was very small. I was
About 6 years old, maybe.
Yeah,
Sounds like about
a little less than 6 years
6
old,
years
between
old.
5 and 6 years old. She decided to divorce him. Back in that day, in particular in the Holiness Church, divorce was really frowned upon. I remember I didn't know what was happening because I was too young, but I remember this event very well. They got 2 or 3 sheets and put some clothes in there and tied it up and carried it over and hid it behind some haystacks over on the road. And then Uncle Floyd White, who used to live in Rainswood. That's my uncle, my mother's brother.
So Lowell, just a reminder, everybody loved Morrell and Hollis White.
Morrell and Hollis White.
Hollis White. And a lot of people didn't realize you guys were, what was y'all been?
We're first cousins.
First cousins.
First cousins. Hollis just a little older than I, and Morrell just a little younger than I. Unfortunately, both of them have passed away. But anyway, we left, and times were very hard. We had 2 mules and 2 plow stocks and a wagon. They didn't call them wagons back then. We just called them wagons. And there was no welfare, no food stamps, none of that kind of stuff. So it was our job to try to make a living on about 25 acres of land. Well, it rocked around till the fall of that year, and so I was to start to Powell School in the 1st grade. The old Powell School, in the area where Judge Paul Thomas used to live, it had burned the previous year, and they were having school that year in New Straight Creek Church. So I started the first day of school, and I was scared. Back then, we didn't have television, no phone, no communications. It's pretty dark days. And my older brother came back there and said, "Lowell, your daddy's out front, wants to see you." And I said, "I don't want to see him. I'm afraid of him." And he had not been nice to the family. He said, "Well, he's got something he wants to give you." So I walked out front, and he was standing out there with a taxi cab, a 4-door taxi cab, and he was standing there at the back door with the back door open, back to the back seat, and handed me a banana. And as I reached to get it, he grabbed my arm and throwed me into the back seat of that taxi cab and held me down for seemed like forever. And we wound up in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. He and I went in to see a big banker up there who had hundreds and hundreds of acres of cotton, and we hired on to pick cotton. And that banker said we could live in a little shack that wound up not having windows in part of the shack down on his place down next to a creek. So we were doing that, and I wasn't big enough to really understand. I just understood I didn't like what was happening, but I didn't have any choice. Well, I didn't have any shoes, and I was tearing up my feet with briars and whatever. So Dad told me, he said, tomorrow when we finish picking cotton, we'll catch the bus and go into Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, which is about 8 or 10 miles from where the cotton patch was, and get you some shoes. I said I would like that. Well, we got on the bus, public transportation, and they were building a new bridge. So the buses and everything had to go below the bridge. They'd put some big rocks and all, kind of afford the creek deal. And the bus driver got too far off to the right and got the bus stuck. Well, we sat there and waited a long time, and finally another bus arrived to pick us up and carry us wherever we were going. Well, lo and behold, the bus driver on the new bus was my Uncle D. Barron. That was my dad's brother. They lived up in Ardmore, Tennessee. And we sat behind him, and Dad talked on the bus till he told us where we were supposed to go. Well, that didn't mean much to me, but back then there was no telephone. Communication was really tough. It's 48. But Aunt Frances, Uncle D's wife, got that story from Uncle D, and she wrote my mother a letter about 2 sessions telling my mother where I was and where we were working. Well, we were picking cotton one afternoon, unexpectedly. It was about a week from the time we rode that bus. And it must have been 50 or 100 people picking cotton in that field, big field. We were out near there was a road to the end of that where they bring the tractor and the wagon and you'd weigh your cotton and put it on the trailer. I saw this car coming down that road, which was very strange. That was a tractor road. Well, it came on down a ways, and I was picking cotton. My dad was picking 2 rows, and I picked on one side with a little sack. And I saw a woman get out of that. In a minute, I recognized that about 100 yards away. I said, "That's Mama." I throwed my sack off. I didn't say nothing. I went running as hard as I could and jumped in my mother's arms. Such a happy moment for me. But Dr. Barron was, they had rented a taxi. We didn't have anywhere to go. Dr. Barron, he wasn't a doctor then. He was still in school. Got out, and they walked off down and talked to my daddy and come back up, and the taxi driver brought us back home. Well, I didn't attend first grade anymore that year. Was afraid he'd come back and get me again. Mother was. So that was an interesting start to my life. But they built a new school, and I started attending school. They passed me, although I didn't go to school. They passed me to the 2nd grade. In the 2nd grade, I developed a little bit of a stutter. And Mr. Head was my teacher, a nice man. And I know it was because I didn't know how to read, but I didn't know it then. I just was very uncertain and stuttered when I tried to read it. He got me up in his lap. We'd read in a circle, about 8 or 10, 15 kids. And he got me, and he'd help me. Oh, in no time, I was reading and not stuttering. So that was an interesting time in my life. And they proceeded, and Mother and Dad got the divorce, and he went on his way, and we stayed on the farm working to make a living. And it was very hard. It took all the money we had a $500 a month or a year payment on the farm, and everything we could make, it took it to pay that $500. Don't seem like much today, but in 1948, $500 would have been like $10,000 today, or $5,000, a lot. So, but we would pick our cotton, and then when we got finished with that, we'd hire out to someone else that had some cotton that needed picking. They'd pay us $2 a 100 pounds that we picked, or we'd pull bowls. That would be the scraps after all the good cotton was picked. You pull the bowls. But I could pick 200 pounds of cotton as I got a little older. Mother, she could pick 300 pounds every day. She was so fast and so good. So we picked our own cotton, hauled it out to the gin there close to the college. Where we live was 3 miles down from Northeast Junior College. We would tear the cotton out there to the gin and have it gin. But when it's all said and done, we had to use all that to pay it's a farmer's home program that financed our place. But it was tough. We just didn't have any money left. But when we'd tear a bale of cotton out there was 2 Mitchells out there, C.O. Mitchell and A.G. Mitchell. A.G. was a really nice man. He'd come up and pat me on the head and pat me on the back and would give me a dime. And back then, you could buy a big old poke of candy for a dime, and you didn't call it a bag, you called it a poke. And I mean, a dime was a big deal back then. It'd be as much as $1 or more today. But those kind of times we learned. So I began attending Powell School, which was we rode a school bus, They tore that old school building down about 2 or 3 years ago. It's right there behind the bank in Powell. I remember very well, and it stayed on my mind all my life. It was 15 cents to eat in the lunchroom there, and we never had 15 cents. So I always had to carry a biscuit in my pocket. Now, I'm not talking about one wrapped in paper or wrapped in a napkin. We didn't have a napkin. We didn't have any paper. We didn't have a paper bag. Sometimes we'd buy something at the store, and if we ever had a paper bag, I could use it and have nothing to wrap it until it got so greasy a hole came in it. But the fact that I had to go to the lunchroom and eat my biscuit where everybody was eating green beans, English peas, mashed potatoes, cornbread, and a meat. Miss Jones was our lunchroom cook. 2 ladies cooked in there. And I'd look at that and I'd want that so bad. But we didn't have 15 cents. So I've spent the rest of my life making sure that my children and I have more than 15 cents. And it's worked because I've used the theory, there ain't no can't. During that time, when I finished high school, I decided I wanted to go to college. Didn't have any knowledge about that. I put my stuff in a pasteboard box, got up at Duncan's Crossroads, which is where the Northeast College is, and I thumbed. Back then, they'd pick you up. People would pick you up, and that day, I thumbed to Sneed College. Went in to see the dean, Dean Riesland. I said, Dean, I won't go to college, but I have no money. He said, that's not a problem, son. We'll give you a work scholarship. I said, well, what is that? He said, well, we've got 5 or 6 big 55-gallon barrels thrown around on campus, and we've got a long-handled wagon type with you stood it up on the barrel and lean the handle back, and your job will be to carry it down to the dump behind the dorm. And I said, what will that pay for? He said, for everything, your room, your books, your food, everything. Boy, that was music to my ears. It was wonderful. And as I started doing that, every barrel didn't get full every day. I said, my Lord, to myself, I said, my Lord, this is the finest, best job. I've worked hard on the farm. I know about hard work. This is not hard work, and it's paying for my college. So I went there 2 years, and I had learned growing up with my 2 brothers. We didn't have the money to buy a haircut, so we had Grandpa White's old hand clippers. You use them like this, and we cut each other's hair. And so I honed that skill a little bit. R.L. Cooch was cutting hair up in Rainsville. I went up there to see him about cutting hand clippers, and he laughed. He laughed at me, and he said, I've got some electric clippers I'll give you, and I'll teach you how to use them. Well, I did. So it's neat. I started cutting people's hair in the dorm for 50 cents a head. I would cut the basketball team's hair free.
I never knew
when
that.
The word
I've
got
never
out
heard that.
that I was
That's
cutting
new.
their hair for free, all the men wanted to come to me. Well, I began making money. Well, I transferred on to Auburn in pharmacy, which I wanted to do. And I went uptown. There's 5 major barbershops in Auburn, Alabama. They hired me, one of the big barbershops. Down there, I cut $1.50, and I got the $1, and the shop got the 50 cents. So those are some of the little experiences that I had. Wonderful life, but I got the positive attitude of there ain't no can't. So I worked through Sneed with scholarship from Sneed, moving the barrels in Auburn. I cut hair in the big barbershop, and down there, there were 2 Rawson boys, stars on the football team. Larry was one of them, he came in, they always put the youngest barber in the back chair in a barber shop. So I was the back chair. He came in, they'd come in, and if the other chairs were full, that meant the barber in the back got the customer. And so he came on back, and I cut his hair. Well, the word got out that I was cutting some of the football players' hair. I didn't try to stop that talk. That talk was very good to me, and it brought in more customers to that barber uptown that's cutting the Rawson brothers' hair. And Larry, and I'm trying to think what the other one's name is. But Larry was the first one to cut, and then he brought his brother in, and then they brought other football players and other buddies and friends in, and so I made a pretty good living, and enough to buy a car, pay my way through college, and not borrow any money. So when I got out of college, I didn't have student debt, which is mandatory now. College is so expensive now, I couldn't do that, but I could do that in 1965, 64, 63, 64, 65. I don't know what my life would have been like if Mother hadn't been able to locate me. I was up in Tennessee, and nobody knew where I was.
This series here is called Seasons of Life. I've had this ideal now for a long time. I'm really not that smart, but I'm smart enough to read good books here that give me these ideals. So to everything, there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. That's Ecclesiastes 3:1. New seasons happen when we get married, start a career, or have children. Other seasons are harder. Lowell, you was going through a hard season right there when your father kidnapped you, and you a little boy, 6, 7 years old, you were scared to death.
5 or 6.
5 or 6 years old, you were scared to death. So that was a hard season for you. And we find ourselves reaching differently to each one, often experiencing a fight or flight. I'm sure sometimes you just wanted to run, but you didn't have anywhere to go. In
my entire life, there's never been a thought about cutting and running. I never cut and ran. In later political life, a lot of things I never thought about cutting and running, because I had that little saying with me, there ain't no can't, and I didn't intend to let it be negative, and it didn't turn out negative. I've got the most wonderful family. I've got a wonderful wife named Dee Dee. I've got a wonderful son, Lowell Ray II. When he was born, they said, "You don't name him Lowell Ray Jr.?" I said, "No, I don't want him to be a junior to nobody. He's going to be the second, Roman numeral 2. And Shayla, my other daughter, who lives in Gunnersville, and I have 2 wonderful stepchildren, Collier Craft, who lives in Birmingham, very successful. I'm so proud of him. He's done real well. And Lauren, who lives up in Tennessee. So I've got a wonderful, loving family today, and I'm so proud of them. And I'm proud of friends like you all. Thank you for letting me be part of this podcast that you're doing, and I look forward to seeing how many mistakes I made when I watched it.
So me and Lowell talked about this. I called him a while back, and I wanted him to tell his story, and he did a perfect job. It was his life, his season of life that was hard, and he told me the story he told today about his dad kidnapping him and not being a very nice person, and to accomplish what he's accomplished. We all know Lowell Barron, all of us, and we know where he's at and where he's been, especially now we know where you've been. We didn't know that until now. And such a great story. There's so many lessons to be learned here. And folks, Sand Mountain, Fort Payne, Northeast Alabama, this is a prime example. We can come to you. I asked Lowell where would be a good place to do this, and he said, "How about my office?" And so we can come to you. If you have a story of your life, your family, please do it now Lowell wanted to tell his story while he could remember his story and pass it on, because you know what? Once the Lowell Barrons of this world and the ones that went through a lot of events in their life, if they don't tell it while they can and remember to tell it, it's gone. So please give us a call to pass on to our families. Now, me and you may be gone, but there'll be a day that a lot of the family will be so proud that this happened today, to pass it on.
I agree. And I want to remind folks, I purposely didn't go above early childhood today because we only had 30 minutes, and that would have taken hours and days and weeks to tell my entire life story. But it's been a wonderful life. I'm so happy on my 84th birthday. Such a happy man.
Such a happy day, 84 years old. I do want to ask you a couple of things. I forget. Now, you had a pharmacy here in Fife. Is that right?
I started the pharmacy. Let me tell you the way that I started the pharmacy. I came back there to do my one-year internship. God, this is a story. To do my one-year internship in Gaston Lane, Rexall Drug, over there in the Agricola Shopping Center. I worked there almost 6 months, very unhappy. The two pharmacists were lazy, smoking cigarettes, and I'd have to clean up their nasty dishes and a little sink. I was very unhappy. So I decided that I'd just start my own drugstore. Well, I called Mr. George Gibson, the banker at Rainsville, one Sunday about borrowing money to start a new drugstore in Fife. He said, I don't talk banking business on weekends. You'll have to come to my office on Monday. I said, Mr. Gibson, I knew him. I said, Mr. Gibson, I have to work on Monday. I work at the pharmacy. I can't come on Monday. He said, well, call me Monday and let's talk on the phone. So I called him, asked him about borrowing money to start a pharmacy. He finally said, I'll loan you $5,000. Well, wasn't much, but it's a whole lot more than I had, which is nothing. So I said, I'm going to do it. So I quit my job, turned in a notice, because I didn't like working for somebody else at Liggett Lane, Rexall, with pharmacists that I didn't respect. So I came up here and got everything together in that little place out there and bought all the merchandise I could with $5,000. Well, I suddenly one day realized, and it hadn't crossed my mind, that I didn't have my license. I like 6 months, which was state law, working under a registered pharmacist to get my license. Well, this was a problem. So I went about solving that problem. There was a Mr. Thomas in Scottsboro, had the 2-story brick pharmacy there at one time. He went blind. I knew him. Now I went over to see Mr. Thomas. I asked him, I said, would you work for me in my drugstore? You're a registered pharmacist. Oh, yeah. He said, well, I can't see. I said, I know you can't see. He said, you'd have to come get me and bring me home. I said, I understand that. And I agreed to do that. And I told him what I'd pay him. He was so happy to do that. So I'd go get him every day, bring him to my pharmacy. He'd sit back there and do whatever he'd done to occupy himself. Couldn't fill prescriptions, and I'd carry him home.
I was thinking about this blind man putting those pills in those bottles. That would have been a problem, wouldn't it?
He was a blind pharmacist, but it qualified me.
There you go.
To be for my one-year internship, and then I took the pharmacy board test, passed that, and then the pharmacy is the one here in Fife, and I ran it for 13 years, sold it. It was very successful. I was making good money. But I decided to sell it because I began building houses, and I was got pretty good at it, building several. One Saturday, I told the wife, I said, I made about $1,000 today in the pharmacy, and I could have made 5,000 or more. I had couples coming in wanting to see the houses, but I was too busy filling prescriptions. I said, I'm going to sell the drugstore, and I'm going to do real estate all the time. And that is another long story that turned out I made a lot more money. It got me over the 15 cents a day deal for my lunch.
So you probably broke down and bought a steak occasionally.
I still don't eat steaks. I don't eat much meat. I was raised on a farm, and my wife likes meat. I don't care for
Well,
it.
do you have mashed potatoes and green peas?
And English peas.
English peas, yes.
And cornbread. That's what I had there at Pal's, and I still love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I just I'll eat, but I never eat steak. I hadn't eaten steak in so long, but I can't afford it. Times are hard, and I just can't afford it.
So
that's been the story of my life, to save money,
Yeah.
to pretend to myself that I'm broke. And I do that all the time now. I don't spend money, I save it, and it's been very helpful.
So can we move on here? You were mayor here for a while.
I was mayor for 13 years.
Now, what was the other 13?
That's another long story, how I became
We
mayor.
may have to do another one of these. We may not can get all this in
We
one.
have to do dozens of 30
Okay.
minutes.
If you're willing, we're
But I
willing.
was mayor for 13 years
Okay.
at Fife, and the pharmacist enjoyed every day of it. And from that, I ran for higher office and got elected and enjoyed every day of that. And
How long were you a senator?
28 years.
28 years.
Yeah.
Yes, we got
So
people clapping. Yes.
I was in political office about 42 years consecutively elected. And because people were good to me, like you all.
Yeah.
You voted for me, and you allowed me.
You know what I remember
me to
about
build
that?
4-lane highways and new schools and roads and bridges, and
I think
I loved every bit of it.
I think you may have had a write-in campaign.
That's another long story.
Yeah, we're gonna have to have another one of these. We're gonna have to have another one.
Long story.
Okay.
They kicked me out, and I got elected and stayed elected 1 year, and the party kicked me out of my job that I just got elected to. And lawyer Bill Scruggs called me and said people was mad, and Bill said, why don't you do a write-in election? Just had a month, and from the time he called me, just had 3 weeks. And so I got on that sand, my mama said, and we made that work. I won by a large margin, people writing my name in. But that's for another day. And
Yes,
thank the Lord. This 30 minutes is over, and I've enjoyed it with you all, and I've enjoyed it with the audience.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, my friend.
Thank you.
God bless you.